Right, because he has brown eyes.
Is that the only reason? He didn't call him brown eyes yesterday, and he had brown eyes yesterday. Didn't he?
Because we just started it. Yeah, ever since you put those blue things on there to tease him.
I don't know. Don't ask me. Did he?
Okay, Tess, can you hear me? That too loud? What's that? Do what? Okay. Yep, no, can everybody hear me okay? Probably can hear me okay if I don't have a mic. Is that too close? Okay, all right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Jo Vance. I'm from the Weston Group out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Jenny has asked me to come here today and talk to you about respect in the workplace. And so before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been with the Weston Group, which is an HR management consulting company, for the last 18 months, but I've been in HR for about 30 years. I started when I was 12, right before I came to Dakota State. So yeah, I graduated from Dakota State back in 1988. 3 of my 5 siblings have graduated from Dakota State, but it's been a while. I don't think when I was here I know this building was here, but I don't think it was in use. Does anybody know? Okay. I do know the library was there because I did go there, honest to God. I probably shouldn't tell this to you guys, but the first thing, my grandma brought me up here to sign up for classes. And the first thing I signed up for classes, I came out and said, Grandma, I don't have classes on Thursday. And I don't know if Wednesday's still the fun night for everybody, but she knew it was the fun night. And I found out later that fall, that was the first thing my college roommate's mother heard me say as well. We made it, it was good. But before coming to the Weston Group, I worked at Wells Fargo. And I worked there as an HR consultant for about 14 years. It's been long enough ago that I worked at Sioux Valley Hospital for about 9 years there. Some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about in the beginning about diversity were things I learned at Wells Fargo. I don't know if anybody's ever worked there before, but diversity is pretty important to Wells Fargo. And so I actually taught a class that all employees had to go through, and it was called Working Together to Create an Inclusive Environment. It was an 8-hour class that all new employees came into, and we started out in the morning, and I could see people coming in the room going, are you kidding me? We're gonna have to talk about diversity for 8 hours? How are you gonna do that? What are you gonna do? And I can tell you, every time I facilitated that class, it opened people's eyes, and they realized why we did it. And truly what we did in that class was not to change anybody's beliefs, but it was just to kind of open your eyes on what diversity means and how important it is in the workplace to to get to know each other and find out a little bit more about them. So it was a great class. So some of what I'm going to talk about today I took from Wells Fargo. So we'll talk about diversity. We also will talk about what's appropriate and inappropriate in the workplace. We'll talk a little bit about harassment, understanding the importance of respecting the differences between individuals. And then I probably won't do a lot about this because I talked to Jenny beforehand. You guys should all know if you're in a situation where you're feeling like you're being harassed, what steps you need to take. And if you don't, Jenny will be here at the end, right? Okay, so as individuals, we all have our own values, beliefs, and traditions. So I won't read through all of those things, but this is what makes us up. All of those, our religion, education, marital status, how old we are, everything that makes us unique. So when you think about respecting for diversity, appreciation really starts with open, honest communication by not forming first impressions based on physical or behavioral characteristics. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. I don't know how well you can see this. This is what I would call a workforce diversity wheel. What we have in the primary circles are gender, sexual orientation, physical mental abilities, age, origin, ethnicity, and race. So those are kind of the core things to us. Then when you look outside that the secondary wheel, it's more things that I would say are our choice. So if I'm gonna work, what's my communication style, marital status, military, again, the religious beliefs, if I wanna be a parent or not, smoker, non-smoker, education, and those kind of things. So those are the things that we think about when we think about diversity in the workplace. Has anyone ever heard of R. Roosevelt Thomas before? Okay, so he's really considered the father of diversity. So he's the CEO of R. Thomas Consulting, and I love this quote. So, managing diversity is the process of creating and maintaining an environment that naturally enables all participants to contribute to their full potential in pursuit of organizational objectives. So, what sticks out to you when you look at that quote? Or does anything? Have you ever worked in an environment where you did not feel like you could create and maintain an environment that naturally enables all participants? Do you ever feel like you couldn't be your whole self in the workplace? Yeah, I mean, I think that happens to a lot of people. And again, when I worked at Wells Fargo, we did a lot of things we had networks called team member network groups. And I'm not going to be able to name them all, but one was African American, one was a pride group, one was disabilities. We had a generation one. And what that team member network group would do, I could be part of the African American one, and obviously I'm not African American. And what we would do is meet on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and we would learn about the different things for an African American or the pride group or anything like that. And we would do a lot of volunteering activities and those kind of things, really to get to know each other, sometimes in the workplace and sometimes outside the workplace. But that was really the intent when you work for an organization. If I can't be my whole self, if I can't tell them that I'm gay, or, like people would be afraid to say, Mary Jo, what did you do this weekend? And if I didn't feel like I could open up to them, I'm probably not going to be, I'm hiding things, and I'm not going to be able to be working toward the pursuit of that organizational objective. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think about when I grew up, and I grew up in Hartford, South Dakota. I had, my whole family's Caucasian. Pretty much everybody in my family have been married. We haven't gone through divorces. And when I graduated in 1986, there were 2 kids in my class that went through a divorce. We were all white, and I think there was a time that I had 1 African American family in my school. If you had special needs, you went to, it was called Crippled Children's Hospital at the time. You didn't go to school at West Central, you went somewhere else if you had a disability. Think about how much that has changed. I have 2 girls, both my girls graduated from West Central. The dynamics had changed a little there. I mean, still not wide open, but they had different experiences than me. Do you think it's easier for them to have that be more natural for them? Expect that diversity? I think, I mean, my eyes were wide opened when I went to Wells Fargo and I got to meet so many different backgrounds and whatnot. So I think that's an important thing to think about is the evolution of diversity and what's happened over the years. Now, the other thing that when you think about diversity, we all make assumptions of people. So that the process of managing assumptions is simple to describe, but not simple to do. So think about how many times we make assumptions of people. I think every day. I think a lot of times if I'm going to fly, and you see people in the airplane or the airport, that you make assumptions of people. I will say that after 9/11, I flew, and I was flying a lot by myself when I worked at Wells Fargo. I had to sit next to a Muslim, and I was nervous, and that was my assumption. That was an assumption I made. I don't know, there's not any professors in the room, right? You're just your staff. Oh, okay, good. An exercise that we did in the class that I taught at Wells Fargo, but you could do it kind of anywhere. It was a really fun assumption exercise. So at lunchtime, we asked about 3 or 4 volunteers to come tell us a couple things about themselves that they were willing to share, that maybe nobody else in the room would know about them. So it could be, I was in foster care for the first 16 years of my life. I have 10 tattoos. I sing karaoke every Friday night. I can't hear out of my right ear. Anything that they were willing to write down on paper, we hung it up on the wall, and when the class came back at lunch, they had to go up and say, I think that's Mary Jo, or I think that's John. And really, all we were doing is making assumptions about people. And it was a really eye-opening exercise to go through, because a lot of times the class was way wrong on the people who they thought was Mary Jo or who was John. So think about that every time that you make an assumptions. And I don't have a really good experience to tell you, but can you all think about a time that you made an assumption about somebody and then you got to know them and you were totally wrong? I know that's happened to me. I just can't think of one and a good example of that. But I think that's something that you have to every day think about, be aware of it, take ownership, and manage through that while we make those assumptions. Okay. How many people have ever heard of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise? So have you seen the video? Some of you have seen the video then? Okay. Well, I'm going to have you live through it again, all right? So what happened, this is Jane Elliott was a teacher out of Riceville, Iowa. I looked up there, I think there was like 971 people that live there today. But this was back in 1971. And so she's in a classroom, I think they're second graders. Third grade. They were in 3rd grade, and she's doing a video or an exercise called Blue-Eyed, Brown-Eyed. And I'm going to show it to you. What you'll see is, you'll see them being students as 3rd graders, and then they're going to flash forward to about their 20th reunion. And you can see some of those same students reacting to the way they reacted to the video. So I'm hoping this works.
Black people niggers. Is that the reason
It's not great picture quality.
National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood?
Be kind to your brothers.
Okay, be kind to your brothers.
Like you would like to be treated.
Treat everyone the way you would like to be treated. Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else? Absolutely, the Indians. And when many people see a black person or a yellow person or a red person, what do they think?
Look at that. Dumb people.
They look at the dumb people. What else do they think sometimes? What kinds of things do they say about black people?
Call them niggers.
In the city, many places in the United States, how are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They're part of this world. They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different colors.
You think you know how that would feel to be judged by the color of your skin?
Yeah.
Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day.
Up here?
I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people.
My dad isn't that stupid.
Is your dad brown-eyed?
Yeah.
One day you came to school and you told us that he kicked you.
He did.
Do you think a blue-eyed father would kick his son?
Yeah. My dad would.
My dad's blue-eyed. He's never kicked me. Greg's dad is blue-eyed. He's never kicked him. Rex's dad is blue-eyed. He's never kicked him. This is a fact. Blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people. Are you brown-eyed or blue-eyed?
Blue.
Why are you shaking your head?
I don't know.
Are you sure that you're right? Why? What makes you so sure that you're right?
I don't know.
The blue-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess, while the brown-eyed people have to stay in. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground because you are not as good as blue-eyed people. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. On page 127. 127. Is everyone ready? Everyone but Laurie. Ready, Laurie?
Brown-eyed.
She's a brown-eyed. You'll begin to notice today that we spend a great deal of time waiting for brown-eyed people. The yardstick's gone. Well, okay. I don't see the yardstick, do you?
It's coming over there. Hey, Miss Doug, you better keep that on your desk so if the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh! You think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use? Who goes first to lunch?
Blue-eyed.
The blue-eyed people. No brown-eyed people go back for seconds. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
They're not smart.
Is that the only reason?
They'll take too much.
It might take too much. Okay, quietly.
And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
Why Yes. Were two of you boys fighting?
Yeah. Russell and John were.
What happened, John?
Russell called me names and I hit him in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes.
Did you call him brown eyes?
They always call us that. Craig and all of the boys
They keep calling us brown eyes. They say, come here, brown eyes. And they were calling us blue eyes.
I wasn't. Sandy and Donna were.
Yeah.
What's wrong with being called brown eyes?
It means that we're stupider. Well, not that. But
Oh, that's just the same way as other people call black people niggers. Yeah.
Is that the reason you hit him, John? Did it help? Did it stop him? Did it make you feel better inside?
Stop Russell.
Make you feel better inside? Did it make you feel better to call him brown eyes? Why do you suppose you call him brown eyes?
Right, because he has brown eyes.
Is that the only reason? He didn't call him brown eyes yesterday, and he had brown eyes yesterday. Didn't he?
Because we just saw it. Ever since you put those blue things on the
They tease them. Kind of tease them.
Oh, is this teasing?
No. Well, he did it.
Were you doing it for fun, to be funny, or were you doing it to be mean? I don't know. Don't ask me. Did anyone laugh at you when you did it? I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little third graders in a space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. Russell, where are your glasses?
I forgot them.
You forgot them. And what color are your eyes?
Blue.
Susan Ginder has brown eyes. She didn't forget her glasses. Russell Ring has blue eyes, and what about his glasses? He forgot them. Yesterday we were visiting, and Greg said, "Boy, I like to hit my little sister as hard as I can. That's fun." What does that tell you about blue-eyed people?
They're naughty. In fact, they fight a lot.
The brown-eyed people may take off their collars, and each of you may put your collar on a blue-eyed person. The brown-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess. You blue-eyed people are not allowed to be on the playground equipment at any time. You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. Do blue-eyed people know how to sit in a chair? Very sad. Very, very sad. Who can tell me what contraction should be in the first sentence? Go to the board and write it, John. Come on, let's do it again. Loosen up. Up, up, up. Come on. That's better. Now, do you know how to make a W? Okay, write the contraction for we are. Now that's beautiful writing. Is that better?
Yes.
Brown-eyed people learn fast, don't they?
Yeah.
Boy, do brown-eyed people learn fast. Very good. Greg, what did you do with that cup? Will you please go and get that cup and put your name on it and keep it at your desk? Blue-eyed people are wasteful. Okay, you want to be timed this morning?
Yeah.
I use Orton Gillingham Phonics. We use the card pack. and the children, the brown-eyed children, were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people.
I thought we were going to get in the
You went faster than I've ever had anyone go through the card pack. Why couldn't you get them yesterday?
We had those collars on.
You think the collars kept you
just keep thinking about those collars.
Oh.
And my eyes kept getting rolling around.
Oh, and you couldn't think as well with the collars on. 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
I know we weren't going to make it.
How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
Why? What were you thinking of?
This.
I hate today.
How do you do? I hate too.
Because I'm blue-eyed.
See, I am too.
There's nothing, it's not funny, it's not fun, it's not pleasant. This is a filthy, nasty word called discrimination. We're treating people a certain way because they are different from the rest of us. Is that fair?
No.
Nothing fair about it. We didn't say this was going to be a fair day, did we?
No.
And it isn't. It's a horrid day. Okay, you ready? What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
Oh, you feel
I know what they felt like yesterday.
I did too.
How did they feel yesterday?
Down.
Like a dog on a leash.
Yeah.
It feels like a chain
them up
wherever you go.
into prison. Like you're chaining them up into prison. Like and you're throwing the key away.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
All right. So thoughts on the video?
27.
What surprised you? Yes.
I think it's interesting that as a culture right now, we know that diversity is, something that we're used to, but to see her and her insight how many years ago, pretty interesting.
And she got death threats after doing something like that in the classroom. I don't know if you followed that. Actually, Oprah Winfrey did a similar exercise on the show and had Jane Elliott there. I don't know if anybody's seen that. And then did you see it? Okay. Do you remember what happened? I didn't actually see the Oprah one, but what Oprah did was, if you came in to go to her show and you had blue eye, you went into the room that didn't have air conditioning, you had to stand and wait, the brown-eyed people got to go in first, and she just kind of divided them up that way. But I do know that Jane Elliott did get some death threats after she did that exercise. And from my understanding, there's been some schools that have tried the exercise. I know Lenox was one of them that did it at one point. That's been quite a few years ago. But, I think you bring up a very good point. The other thing is that collar can be anything. It doesn't just have to be the color of my skin. So what other kind of collars can we have on in the workplace? What other kind of collars would you say?
Single versus married.
Yep. No kids, or if you have kids or you choose not to have kids, yeah. What else? Mm-hmm.
I was surprised at how easily they adapted to being less than the other person.
Right.
And as I was watching it, I was thinking that it's too bad because parents wouldn't let that happen today, that exercise.
Right.
And all that's doing is compounding the problem of
Sure.
discrimination. But they very easily fell into the role they told they were told they were.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And there's like 4 different groups that you put them in, and they have to build a community. While one of them is a very small but has the most people in it.
Okay.
And then they have like you have police as part of the exercise, and you can then put them in jail. And a lot of them act out because there's more room in the jail. So that's another piece that you saw with them, is how quickly they were mean, and friends that they were playing with the day before, they weren't. How quickly they take on some of those negative behaviors because of the situation they think they're in.
And they lashed out pretty quickly. And the other thing I think, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Related to what Deb was saying, is I was more surprised with how fast the first day the blue-eyed kids started being mean to the other group. Like, not so much, I mean, if you sit there and tell somebody you're inferior, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're slow, you're this, you say all those negative
Yep.
words, I would kind of expect those people to kind of shrink down and be less of themselves. But, like, automatically the other group started being mean to that group for the same reason. That was really surprising.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, these are the same people you played with.
That they were, right, exactly. And you think about them being in third, yeah, no. Someone was going to say something over here? Or no, okay, I thought someone raised their hand. Think about that. Then the other thing too, when they played the flashcards, how quickly, when they had the collar on, how much worse their performance was. And so I think about that in the workplace. I'm an outgoing person. I don't normally have a problem feeling like I fit in. When I left the hospital, I went to a place that I worked 9 months, and I never, ever felt like I fit in. And I don't think my performance showed it. I didn't have enough work to do, but I never felt like I could be my whole self. And so think about that for people that have collars on every day. And again, not just the color of your skin. There's so many different collars that you can have on. I think back, and this probably isn't a good example of collars, but I have size 11 feet. I have since I was in 7th grade. It's not that big a deal now, but back when I was in high school, and even before, because it was like 7th grade, I remember going into stores. I played basketball. I'd go into the stores to get a basketball shoe, and they'd say, well, we have that size in men. Well, I have narrow feet, big feet. I mean, it was traumatic for me. And this sounds stupid too, but I remember my friends, they would take my shoes off and like before school started and throw my shoe all around. Again, probably not a really good example of a collar, but to me that was a big deal. I really don't care. I have size 11 feet anymore, but it was a little traumatic for me back then. Now, what you don't see, the end of this video, they interview those students that you kind of saw them flash up to the 1984 reunion. And they said things like, we learned how to hurt each other in that horrible way, and we never want to hurt anyone else like that again. The video illustrates the power of exclusion and that terrible impact it can have on everyone involved. And again, really, really quick that happened too. So when you think about the workplace and thinking about someone that has a collar on, what kind of things can you do to help them take that collar off? What things can you do in the workplace? Yeah. I mean, basically, take the color off yourself. You don't see it. Right. Yeah. I just thought about something. I've been involved in, we're not doing it right now, but Sioux Falls used to have a diversity conference, and I was on the committee for that. And I remember there was someone on the committee that was Jew. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about Jew. I'm not Jew, and I didn't know a lot about it. And this has probably been 20 years ago. And I remember her saying, well, I don't want to tell you what it is like to be Jew. You should just know that. And well, how should I know that if I'm not, and I've not ever known anybody that was Jew? And so to me, that's how we can learn from each other, is you tell me about that. Tell me about your experiences and those kind of things. I really do think you can learn from each other. But yes, I think that you can think about those collars, and you can go online and look at other videos. I think the Oprah one's out there, I'm sure. Like I said, that's kind of a bad video because it's been around since 1971, but it was pretty impactful, I would say. Any other things that you can think about that you saw in the video that you want to bring up that surprised you at all?
Do you know what group she got death threats from?
People in Riceville, Iowa, gave her, yeah. Oh, and I don't know.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Parents that were upset?
I don't know that for sure. But I do remember reading that in the book that she did get death threats, but I don't know the details. And think about how different things were in 1971. But and she did. If you search Jane Elliott, she did lots of things for years and years after that. After this classroom, she did a lot of diversity teaching and stuff. Okay. So now let's move forward and talk a little bit about appropriate workplace behavior. Seems pretty common sense, but like I said, I've been in HR, and there is a full moon sometimes, and all employees don't always act appropriately at the workplace. But really, this can range from being polite to other staff or being cooperative and helpful to coworkers. So examples, you work well as a team, positive attitude toward coworkers, respect for each other, and respect for individual differences, polite and helpful on the telephone and clients in person. Now I imagine for you guys, you're kind of all probably scattered throughout the campus, is that correct? So you're not working in the same building? Yeah, so sometimes you might not have a lot to do with them, but just thinking about those things that are appropriate in the workplace. Then when we think about inappropriate, it can include actions that cause grave offenses to an individual and or against company policies. Sexual harassment in the form of comments, looks, suggestive body movements, or touching another's body or unwanted attention of a sexual nature. So it could be jokes, comments about your race, religion, sexual orientation, cultural background, any of those kind of things, lack of cooperation with others in your team, and swearing or offensive language. And so, sorry, when you think about that inappropriate workplace, or when we talk about getting along, I don't think any of us have ever worked in a workplace where we haven't had differences with each other. You're going to have that. It's just really how you're going to work through those. I'm the type of person that if I'm working really close with you and we're just not getting along, I throw it out there. What can we do? We need to move on. I know you don't agree with me on this. And I really do think that there can be good conflict in the workplace. And when I say good conflict, what I mean by that is, let's say I have an idea for something and someone else does, really being open to listening to each other's ideas and coming up with the best solution. I learned that many years ago, and that's been a really valuable lesson to me. I will say there's some workplaces that do a better job of that than others, where others maybe just aren't open to letting me voice my opinion on different ideas. So then when we think about respectful communication, 70% of our communication efforts are likely to be misunderstood, misinterpreted, rejected, disliked, or distorted. Can any of you guys think about being in a meeting, and not necessarily here, but being in a meeting and bringing up an idea, and they just keep moving on. They don't even acknowledge that you've said anything. Those kind of things can happen in the workplace all the time. And I think that, again, it can be respectful that, okay, thank you for your idea. That isn't something that we can do right now. Those kind of things are always important, to be polite and appropriate. So we communicate at about a 30% efficiency rate, yet the average person spends about 80% of their waking hours in some form of communication. My husband would kill me if he knew I bring him up whenever I do this conversation or this topic. But he's not much of a smiler, and a lot of times he just seems mad when I'm talking to him. And I'm more of a smiler, and so a lot of times I think people can misunderstand him because he doesn't have a lot of reaction. And truly, it's 55% of your body language, 38% of your voice inflection, and then 7% what you say. For him, it's sometimes how he says it just can come across like he's not that excited about my ideas. I don't know why that would be. And I'm sure you can all think of people like that sometimes just don't show a lot of, I'm pretty emotional. So when you think about disrespectful communication, it can be rumors, gossip, sharing confidential information, and unprofessional language. Again, I'm sure you've all worked in an environment where you had that. I was working with a client last week, and she's in HR, and she's just having a terrible time. She's got a lot of people that are going through a merger. She's got a lot of people that don't trust each other. They're backstabbing each other, and it's just it's a tough environment. She was ready to go on vacation when I visited with her, and that's kind of hard to get out of the workplace, but again, my personality is you kind of have to hit it headstrong and move on from it. But what I have found, if you have a couple people that are doing the rumors and the gossiping, it's hard to kind of move on from that sometimes. So, and you thought you'd get over that after high school, right? So rumor, what you hear. Gossip is what you add to that rumor. So again, you're going to exaggerate each time you talk about it, and then each person adds their own feelings to it as well. So then when we think about harassment, there's different forms of harassment: verbal, nonverbal, and physical. And all of those can happen in the workplace. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that come into the workplace can happen outside of the workplace and then come back in, which is always interesting. And I'll give you an example. Many companies have nepotism policies where, like if your husband and wife you couldn't work together, if you're a boyfriend or girlfriend. And I've ran into that where it's fine when they're getting along, but then when they start fighting is when it gets kind of bad. But if you don't have a policy like that, I would encourage people to have a policy. So, if I got into a relationship with someone and that person was my superior, that we won't keep that same type of relationship. That just, again, it can cause issues if you don't have that policy kind of set up in place. So harassment can be unsolicited or unwelcome. Again, verbal, visual, physical, offensive comments, jokes, posters, pictures, and those kind of things. When we talk about the sexual harassment piece, what I have encountered in the workplace, a lot of times it's more about those jokes. It's telling inappropriate jokes in the workplace. And another client, I had to go in and do a workplace investigation, and they were, telling jokes all the time. And I am all about having fun at work. We're here a lot, and you need to have fun. It just has to be appropriate. I'm not ever very good at telling jokes because I don't remember the punchline, but you just, you do have to make sure that your jokes are appropriate. The last one I just dealt with, it just got to the point where everyone said, that's just her. And they didn't address it. And she was telling some pretty inappropriate jokes in the workplace that needed to be addressed. Okay, so then when you think about verbal harassment, so it could be referring to someone's race, religion, sex, or other characteristics protected by law. Again, those jokes, stories, whistling or barking, grunting. In my 30 years of HR, I've not had to deal, probably whistling maybe, but I haven't had any barking or grunts. Making comments that include statements about inappropriate stereotypical ideas, attributes, or characteristics of other people. And I'm going to show you some examples. I won't read all of these, but you know, here's the first one. If you have trouble with those spreadsheet functions, go find Kim Sung. Those Koreans are whizzes at that stuff. I'm sure she has a lot of money. After all, she's a Jew. You should ask Terry to do your hair. All gay men know how to do hair. And so just thinking about those things when you're saying is inappropriate, and you won't want that person to be going through those things. That would be hurtful to hear those things. And then nonverbal harassment can include written or derogatory material about those characteristics. Again, unwelcome, offensive, or hostile facial expressions or hand and body gestures. Leering, having or sending inappropriate screensavers, wallpaper, email, or social media. And obviously social media has gotten to be a big deal. And then sexually oriented graphics, pictures, calendars, and those kind of things. And again, I would say when I've had to deal with this in the workplace, it's people showing naked body parts of themselves. And you wouldn't think that would happen, but unfortunately, I have had to deal with that in the past in the workplace. Then when you think about physical harassment, that can be threatening or intimidating acts, blocking a person's path with intent to intimidate, pushing, shoving, uninvited touching, caressing, or fondling, those kind of things. And so where we'll spend a lot of time, or a little bit more time, is on sexual harassment. So very common, well-known type of harassment is the sexual harassment. And you know, obviously in the last couple years, there's been lots more that you've heard about it, lots of high-profile cases of people, doing things that weren't appropriate. I know I just read an article about, I'm not going to get it, it was a hospital in California where every day the physician would go into it was a surgeon, and he would go into the operating room and slap the nurse's butt and say things like, I'm horny, and those kind of things. And that went on for a long time. And, the people were just too scared to say anything. And I think that's what you've found over the last couple of years is people have come forward with those people that are pretty high in authority and kind of made it known that, this isn't right to have that happen in the workplace. So sexual harassment is any sexually based behavior that is knowingly unwanted and either has an adverse effect on the person's employment status, interferes with their job performance, or creates a hostile or intimidating work environment. And so when you think about 45% of the EEOC harassment claims have been sex-based. And so the EEOC is Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And this is the last stat. I should have new stats. But at the end of the year in 2015, the EEOC had received over 28,000 harassment claims for both private and public employee. A majority of those, 45%, were sex-based claims. So other types of harassment were based on race, disability, age, national origin, and religion. So keep in mind, though, that's 28,000 that went to the EEOC. Typically, if an employee was going to complain, they would go to a manager or to the HR department. So in my 30 years, I haven't had any claims. If someone came to me and complained about sexual harassment, I haven't had any of them go to the EEOC. So we have no idea how many have gone individually to an employer. And the thing is what has happened with that is as an HR person, a department, you need to investigate those pretty quickly. There was a recent case out of Minnesota that the HR person, it took them 5 months to do the investigation. It was a female person coming forward saying that the male supervisor had harassed her. There were several people that had seen it. The HR person only interviewed a couple people and did not interview everyone that the person that had been harassed or had said that she'd been harassed. And so they got fined. I mean, and truly from an HR perspective, we're all really busy in HR, but 5 months is just way too long. I mean, you want to get that done. And if I have a sexual harassment claim that I've had to do, I pretty much throw everything else aside and get it done. You want to handle it and move on as quickly as you can. So I would be curious to know, I need to get a new stat on that because that was back in 2015. So there's 2 types of harassment, quid pro quo and environmental and hostile work environment. Both of those, you're going to want to make sure you go to your supervisor or go to HR, make sure you let someone know. And the other thing that I would say, for anyone in a leadership role, if someone comes to you and says, I feel like I'm being harassed, but I don't want you to tell anybody, as a leader, you need to tell someone. I've had a lot of people come to me and say that, and I'm sorry, we need to investigate that no matter what. And I will also tell you that I've investigated things that didn't really warrant sexual harassment, but it was important to go through that investigation. So quid pro quo is this for that. So when submitting to or rejecting sexual advances or requests becomes a condition upon what a person's job, career, or upcoming promotion depends. I have not ever had to deal with this in the workplace. Mine has been more the hostile work environment. It does happen, but I've not had to deal with that. And I would say that there's not been a ton of cases. I'm not sure if anybody heard, but there just was a case that came out in Sioux Falls. And if I remember right, it was a supervisor making sexual advances on his employee, but I haven't followed it that close, and I don't think they've really said a whole lot about it. But a year ago, there was one in Sioux Falls that was announced that it was some people that were off-site in Mexico drinking and made advances and whatnot. And so, again, even though that happened outside the workplace, it can come back into the workplace. And I have had to deal with those, and those aren't any fun to have to deal with when lots of times there's drinking involved and those kind of things, and that can kind of get ugly quickly. So when you think about the sexual and the hostile environment, that's unwelcome and demeaning sexually related behavior that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive workplace. It can be very subtle. It may be one incident or several. The intent of the harasser is really irrelevant. If I feel like I'm being harassed and John's harassing me, it doesn't matter his intent. It's how I feel if I feel like I'm being harassed. It's based on the perception or impact of the harassed person. And so keep that in mind. And that, I remember when I worked at Wells Fargo and we new employees would start and we'd talk about appropriate workplace. We just said, you really have to think about what you're doing in the workplace and what you're saying and asking in the workplace at all times. So a hostile work environment is created by a boss or a coworker whose actions, communication, or behavior make doing your job impossible. This can mean that behavior altered the terms, conditions, and/or reasonable expectations of a comfortable work environment for employees. So harassment is more likely to be perceived when the target is female and the perpetrator is male. Not always the case. I've dealt with a few of them the other way. The target has less power than the perpetrator. And that can be, although I've had coworkers to coworkers that we've had issues with, that behavior is repeated. The request by the target for the behavior to stop, and the target suffers emotional or stress-related symptoms. The organization has been soft on the perpetrators before. So if I'm coming into a workplace and I'm feeling like I'm being harassed, and I know that my boss is harassing me, or I feel like he's harassing me, but I know there's other people in the workforce that have felt like they've been harassed, it's probably scary for me to say anything. And that's why it's important that as an organization you do this type of training so that people know that you really do need to come forward. I can tell you it's a tricky part in HR when you have to deal with that, especially if there's a reputation that your organization has that soft spot for the perpetrators in the past. I've had to get into some kind of ugly situations to address that at times, but I do really think it's important to do the right thing. Now, many times if someone would come to me and say that they felt like they would be harassed, probably my first question would be, have you told them that makes you feel uncomfortable? And even if they say no, that's okay. That it just might not be, they might not feel comfortable or feel like they can say anything, but that would be one of my questions that I would ask is, can you go back and tell them, tell him or her that isn't comfortable? So harassment can include unwanted phone calls, emails, gifts, and visits to your home. This recent one that we had, or that they had in Sioux Falls, the supervisor was calling and texting, if I remember right, when I saw that in the news. And so again, it was happening off-site, but many times then, if you have that and they're doing emails at work, as an employer, you can access that. I've had to do that, and it's kind of unbelievable what people would email back and forth to work. But again, they do that. So then think about what is the cost? So there's a definite identifiable cost when harassment happens to someone and it's not firmly addressed and resolved. So if I'm being harassed, I'm probably telling people. I'm probably telling people within the organization, and I'm probably telling people outside the organization that I feel like I'm being harassed. It can be really emotional, it can be physical and economic. So it could be to the point where I'm not coming to work, or I'm going to the doctor, or I'm seeing a counselor, so it's costing the employer health care, those kind of, counseling fees and those kind of things. And then I'm probably not performing very well either if I feel like I'm being harassed. So then you think about the morale is lower, you're confused, and maybe you haven't said anything to anybody because you're too embarrassed to say it. Again, you could be missing work and the premiums, legal expenses. Sometimes employees might not know that they can come to HR first and we can do an investigation. They might go right to a lawyer, which you don't want that either. You'd like to handle it in-house if you can. So how can you maintain a respectful professional work environment? Positive first-person communication. Remember your missions and values. Make sure you're confidential. So that's the other thing. In the workplace, if I'm handling a workplace investigation, what I would tell leaders that I'm working with, it's really important to keep it confidential. They shouldn't be sharing this with other leaders. You really do want to make sure that you keep it to just the people that need to know. You want to be professional and then common courtesy for one another. So then what can you do to prevent that? You want to think before you speak. I can say I've said things in the workplace that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was really dumb. We all do it. You just really do want to think about before you speak. Be careful with humor in the workplace. Conduct yourself professionally at all times. Ask yourself if the behavior you're displaying is what you would want your spouse, children, or parents to witness. Don't allow peer pressure to inappropriate influence you. And I think that's sometimes what I find in the workplace is, they see one person doing it, getting away with it, and then they just decide to keep doing it themselves. And be prepared to assert your rights. So if you see someone that they're making jokes about or whatnot, help them, and even find out what things you can do to help them or make sure that it stops in the workplace. Make sure you're familiar with your guys' company policies and procedures concerning harassment. Determine how you would respond. And again, contact your leader, HR, if you do have those concerns about possible harassment in the workplace. Now, the other thing that you want to do, and you know, pretty early on in your career, or if you have a new person come in, let them know your boundaries. We've probably all worked with people that, from a, you know, just a body space, might really be close, and they want to talk, and that might be really awkward for you or whatnot. I'm probably a touchy-feely person. When I put my hand on your shoulder, if that's uncomfortable, you need to make sure you tell people that. Communicate your expectations and be consistent in your expectations. Set a model for yourself, and again, communicate that discomfort early on, and then seek assistance if that harassing behavior is persistent or pervasive. Again, we would say report it to your supervisor, HR, right away, and then tell that harasser to stop. And that is it. Questions, comments on anything? Oh. Time for a nap? Oh, I'm done early, sorry. All right. I had thought about taking a break, but I just kept going. Sorry. Any other questions, comments about workplace, diversity? How, just out of curiosity, and I had asked Jen before, how diverse is the student population today? Do you guys have stats on that? I mean, not that anybody would have to give me stats, but I'm just kind of curious. Pretty diverse or not? No? Like West Central when I went to school, or? Yeah, oh, now I thought you would probably be a little bit more diverse with the... Not like that. Okay. Because how many students do you guys have now?
We have about 1,500 on campus.
Okay, okay. With the tech, do you have more diversity in the tech? You don't, okay.
Lower.
Really, okay, okay. Interesting. So do you, as a student body, do you guys talk about diversity at all? It's okay if you don't, I'm just curious. Okay, what's your role here that?
I'm the director of student activities and
Okay.
orientation.
Okay.
So we for sure talk about it for the students that attend orientation in their first year.
Okay.
For that first semester, that first weekend. And then we have a person that's dedicated to diversity. We have a diversity committee that's always kind of working on those types of initiatives. And then a lot of like the programming and stuff that I do brings in just different concepts and ideas. And I mean, we definitely could do more.
So do you talk more, when you talk diversity, are you talking more just about race or about other anything? Okay.
And we have quite a few student groups.
Okay.
That, clubs that their whole purpose is special interest in, the Alliance, and we have a Native American club. We just had
Good,
a
okay.
student group start this year that's world languages, so they group together based on what kind of language they want to learn more about. So we have a Dakota group and a Japanese that they're trying to learn Japanese. We have international club.
Okay, good. Now, what about in the classroom itself? Is generational? Do you have mostly just trad just students coming out of high school, or do you have a lot of non-trads coming too?
I think we have obviously
Non-trads.
students, but I would say for the most part on campus are still more of that 18 to 22 type student. The online is probably where there's a little bit more of the difference in, that they're working.
And doing that, yeah.
Going back to school or starting new.
Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. Well, good luck with that. All of those things sound good, though, to be doing the different groups. That's cool. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you so much for having me.